Moi!
Hey, hey!
Welcome to Finland.
Hi, everybody.
You've got Sam Smith, she's from Kalanval Early Learning Centre, and me, Esther King. Some of you may have seen me at Narang Early Learning Centre,
Yes.
or Bellbird Park, or even Kalanval Early Learning Centre. We're just here to share with you our experience here in Finland and how everything is going, and we just wanted to share a few things about why we're here. So we've got our notes here, bear with us. We're just going to go through our notes because there is a fair bit to talk about.
There is.
And it was such an interesting day today. We absolutely loved it and we learnt so much, but we're just going to highlight for you some of the things that really stood out for us that we wanted to share with you all.
Yep.
So given Finland has the #1 education system in the world,
Yep.
being here means that we're able to acquire the knowledge about what makes them world leaders in education. We hope to implement what we've learnt here and bring it back home to Australia and share it with you all.
3 main words which we came across continuously all day today. So
There were lots
Oh,
of
there are
words
lots of words, yes.
to describe your education system, but these 3 were the ones that really stood out for us. So
Yes.
we wanted to share that with you.
Yep. One was, number 1 is trust.
Yeah.
2 was responsibility. And 3 is a Finn word, which we'll get into more detail later, which is called sisu. It's spelled S-I-S-U, which was a word that no one in our group have heard of before. But yes, very interesting when we get to that, about what that word means to the actual Finns, which is great. Trust is huge and is the system from the top of the level government. So it starts right up the top. So the government, the federal funding bodies, I suppose, they're trusted in passing that on to their local governing bodies like city councils. So this is funding, I should say. Sorry, I'm talking about funding. So, and I'll probably gone off the track.
Start from trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
So trust.
Just read what's there.
Okay.
It's
Sorry.
easier.
So trust stems from the top of level of government, where federal funds are distributed to local governing bodies like city councils to allocate their funding equally amongst all their neighbouring schools. So just quickly there, every school within a local council, those council are responsible for those schools. There is no competition or hierarchy amongst the schools. Every school environment is exactly the same. So that stops families from swapping schools and changing schools and interrupting their children, because every school is exactly the same. There's no need for parents to pick and choose and say, oh, this is a better school, so we're going to move. So all schools are exactly the same. The responsibility of the government was to put in place the emphasis of the funding into the education system, as opposed to forking out millions of dollars into welfare. So in other words, what the Finns have decided to do was actually put that money directly into the beginning of a person, instead of having to put that money into welfare for an uneducated or a person that's out of work, which was an amazing approach. So that when the government looked at the country as a whole, they asked themselves, what did they have to give to the world? They actually don't have any raw materials. They aren't able to export goods. They don't have oil or what have you. But what they have are people with brains. So they invested their money into their people straight away. And that is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then trust is then filtered down from that government level down to the teachers, you know. Teachers are given the full responsibility of implementing the curriculum the way they choose to deliver it to their students. So they're responsible for the materials, the content of the curriculum. They talked about how some of the teachers will go and research information, get it published, get the books made up, and then give those resources out to the families and to the children. That was their responsibility as teachers. They're not regulated or monitored, but rather just been entrusted to just be teachers.
Great.
So there's no assessment and rating for the preschools or the schools here in Finland. Not like back home where everyone gets a bit nervous around assessment and rating. Here they don't have assessment and rating at all. Finland don't worry about merit-based systems. For example, there are no top performing schools or teachers, and it's not an environment of competition. They don't really put an emphasis on competition. However, there is a great emphasis on the calibre of teachers that are studying. So teachers are all expected to have a master's degree, even at early childhood level. Because the quality of teachers is so high and the curriculum is so high, there's no need for standardised testing. Sam almost just dropped the laptop, resulting in quality output of students and, them becoming successful.
Yeah, so I will just go talk about that. So every teacher, as I said, which is amazing, is a master's. So that's 5 years of
they do 3 years bachelor and then 2 years doing their masters.
And then they can do an extra year at doctorate level. But to become a teacher, they have to do 5 years university before able to teach in any of the schools. Now, trust is also embedded into children from a very early age. Children are taught responsibility and to be responsible for themselves and to manage their daily lives and needs from a very, very early age. So they're very independent. Oh, we saw it today at a local library, which we'll probably talk about in a little minute, but it's actually embedded into them so early, and it's amazing. So as early as 7, children, for example, have a staggered workday. So they may start late, so they may start at 10 o'clock in the morning and may finish at 3. But both parents normally work, so between the hours of when their parent leave for work till 10 o'clock, that child from the age of 7 is actually responsible for themselves to get themselves ready for school, to get themselves either walking to school, riding their bike, or taking public transport to school. So that trust is put in to the child at an early age that they will be responsible to do that for themselves. Parents don't drop children to school or pick up. Children then find their own way home. Now, timetables are very restricted, are very different as well. So a child may finish school at 12 o'clock, as we saw today. And so from 12 to maybe 5 o'clock in the afternoon when parents are coming home, that child is responsible for themselves from 7 years old. So today, as we saw, we saw some children at the library. So they'd walked from school or found their own way to the library, and they were studying. They were sitting there studying, working on their iPads. They were all around.
And they don't all go to the library.
No.
Some of them go home. And they'll do their studies at home. They'll fix themselves something to eat. They're really independent. And they really push that a lot here in Finland. So they've gone back to basics. I remember as a young child being home alone around that age and doing the same thing. It's a different generation. And I know for a lot of our parents in Australia, they would just be like, gasped.
We were gasped actually slightly because one of the questions we had was, so who was looking after these children? But the trust of the parent has then turned over to the people, not just the child, but also the people that work in the library, as well as the people in the library, that they're all watching and are looking over.
It's a whole community thing. The whole community look out for children's safety. So when we were in the library today, there were 2 girls, and they were sitting there. They actually had their laptop open, and you could tell they were actually engaging in some study, just being autonomous. and self-sufficient, independent, resilient. It was amazing to see.
And
we
how
had
old
never
were
seen
they?
That.
Probably
They were
8.
about 8. Yeah. We thought they would be about 7 or 8, these girls.
Yeah.
The boys were all in another room playing games.
Yeah.
So, they were just playing around and they're not unruly children.
No.
They were really well-behaved
It was great.
children.
I actually really love that because the trust is given back to society, and also trust is given to the child. And because that trust is given so early, I think, it's actually then it's just part of the society and it's part of
the culture.
Yes. So,
So parents are entrusting of the whole system.
It's great.
And the process for education and care. For example, this was something that was interesting that we found out, was that mothers can actually stay home and look after their own children for up to 2 years and receive up to 70% of their pay, of their earnings. So that was an interesting fact. And it's mandatory for fathers to have at least 1 month off. So it's mandatory, fathers, mandatory. To have 1 month off to look after their children.
After the age of 11 months old. So it can be at any stage, but 11 months old onwards is when children actually do start attending maybe early childhood at some stage. So they can't before 11 months?
Yes, and if a mother didn't want to do the full 2 years, she could pass one of those years on to the father to have that year off to look after the children. Early childhood isn't mandatory though. And families can either opt to stay at home or place their children in an early childhood setting. Just like back home. It does become compulsory to send your child to an early childhood setting by the age of 6. Now this age group would be the equivalent, it's the preschool age. Here in Finland. So it's the equivalent of our
kindergarten program.
Yeah, our kindergarten funded program back home in Australia. And that's free. So the government pay for everything.
We did learn that so from that kindergarten program age that we send our children to, which is government funded, is free. Now from 1 to 5, they have daycare here, but that is actually the fees attached to that are very, very minimal, very minimal, as well as it's income based as well. So that's interesting, and we haven't got onto as much of that just yet because today was mainly about the full educational system and about full overview. So we will find out a little bit more about that tomorrow. But that was really quite interesting.
But you'll be pleased to know that education here in Finland is free right up until university. So even at university level, it's free. So, who wants to move to Finland? The only thing about international students is that it's all taught in Finnish. So you have to learn how to speak Finnish if you want to study at university here. While we were at the university today, we looked around and honestly it was all young people.
Very young people.
Back home at university in Australia, we see a lot of varied ages, older people, younger people. Here, everyone was of the same age. They were all really young. And they were all just, enrolled in higher learning.
Yes, because you have the opportunity, of course, to start in daycare, but then from 6 on, of course, is free. So as Esther explained, it's free from 6 all the way. So if you do your master's and if you do your doctorate up to 25 years old, that is all free. There's no paying back. You don't have to pay anything back. It's everything. And on the other level, because we learned that, of course, as we understand in Australia too, we have students that are vocational, so they may want to do a trade, but all the way through up into the end of their trade as well is fully paid. as well as they can cross over. So if they go to the university level and find that that's not suitable, they can cross over to vocational and vice versa. So it's very, very well done.
And vocational care, a vocational education
Yep.
starts from year 10.
Yes.
So they can either opt to stay with the formal schooling
Yep.
and go right up into year 12, or they can choose a vocational education.
Yeah, so that was really good to see how, and one interesting fact, and we're probably going a little bit off the track, but also I thought it was very interesting, which was that the educational system actually started in 1970 when they became independent from the Soviet Union. No, actually, sorry, I missed that. But 1970 to 1990. Took them 20 years to get to their current educational system. So they had a building stage for first 10 years, and then for the next 10, so 1990 onwards, they've used this same system that they have, and nothing has changed, which has been very interesting. Oh yes, so we learned today this word sisu, S-I-S-U. Now it's definitely a Finnish word, and it's great, and it's sort of what it is. It's a concept of the fighting spirit that the Finns have, and that they embed into their culture. So, with the Finns, they've adopted and embedded it into their culture and their values, where children and all people are taught this fighting spirit, never to give up, from an early age. It's part of their survival, the bravado, bravery. And never to quit. So they're never to quit. They're always to keep going, do whatever it takes to win and succeed in life. And when we see that, I suppose, and it's embedded into everything, I suppose that's why they got to where they are, because they want to be the best and they want to be at the top. So that's been great. So as I said, trust was the main one, responsibility. And sisu. So they were three, and when we've been looking and learning about today, things that have been learned today, everything flows through all of that. So it flows very nicely.
Yeah. So after lunch, that was the morning part. After lunch, we went to a local library and they showed us around. And we got to see some familiar books. You'll see them in the pictures that we're going to post up.
Spot the dogs here.
And they were all in Finnish. So what else did we see?
So I did ask the question because I've never been in a country or anywhere where everything is very unfamiliar. So everything is in Finnish. The map that we received yesterday, there's no English. There's no option to get an English map. And same at the library. Everything was in Finnish. So as I said, I laughed and I said, oh, look, they have Spot the dog here, but all that's in Finnish. But she did say they do have English and other cultures, but it's actually very small. There's only a small section for minority because Finnish is the number one language that is spoken. Everyone speaks English, but number one everything. So if you come, as Esther said earlier, come to school or university here, it's Finnish all the way.
Yes. Sometimes they speak, like they have Finnish as their main language, but they also speak a lot of Swedish. But it's not taught in Swedish, it's all taught in Finnish.
Yeah.
So we ended up having a Skype video session with an educator or a teacher who used an app to monitor, very similar to our owner app that we use back there in Australia.
So similar.
Very similar. They had all the checklists for the nappy changes, the sleep times, the bottle feeds, everything. They were also able to track children's learning. It was linked to the curriculum. They had the policies. They could speak to the parents and vice versa. So it was very, very similar to owner. It's called I think Kindy Days.
Kindy Days.
Yeah, Kindy Days. The only thing that they didn't use with the app that we do, because we use everything on owner, the only thing they didn't use were the checklists. And it comes back to that trust. They don't use the checklist because they parents trust that teachers are just doing their job.
Yep.
So a lot of emphasis is placed on quality teaching and quality learning for the children, rather than spending an enormous amount of time doing all the checklists, making sure everything's done, making sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's with our documentation. So it was really good to see that. What else did we?
And it was interesting because when we started the Skype session, she actually started showing us the application that she had on the phone. And as soon as I saw it, I just went, oh, that's what we're using. And I actually felt, oh, great. We're actually doing something that the Finns are doing. And so I was actually really excited. So when she was going through the application and showing us all the things, I thought, no, we're actually doing that. That's great. And because it went even deeper, because it showed how it all links to the curriculum, and it shows the children's growth and their learning, and it ticks all, as I say, ticking all those boxes. But the thing that got me, and as Esther just said, was that, they don't use any of the nappy changing, they don't record the food, that is all taken out. Or it's actually not taken out, sit there, but they don't use it.
They emphasise a lot of the value is based on just spending time with the children, quality time, capturing those teachable moments and recording that, tracking their growth to see how children are developing. Which is what we do,
we do
back home, but I think we're restricted due to some restraints, set by governing bodies and other factors, that we have in our services. From there we went to, we've caught a lot of taxis today. We went to a toy store, and in the toy store it was, a resource centre where you could purchase materials and that for the children. It wasn't too big, but a lot of the resources they had were very similar to what we have. So, they had the kinetic sand, the building blocks, but the thing I did like about that place were a lot of the manipulative...
Oh, yes, you say that.
It was a lot of thought-provoking puzzles that they had, where children had to try and really critically think about the placement of certain puzzles.
Exactly. It was a lot of down to the critical thinking with those puzzles, and there was lots of them. There was so many ages.
There was something that she spotted that she really wanted to share.
I'm actually very excited because, I walked around the shop and I sort of thought, you sort of go, oh yeah, we've got that at home, or we use that at home. And then I saw this weaving machine. And one of the teachers that was with us, she came over and she, a weaving loom, a weaving loom. So it was about this big, and it actually had all the things that you could weave through. And one of the teachers saw me looking at it, and she came over and explained to us, and I think we might have a little clip or just photos of it. She explained that children from year 1, it's mandatory for them to use their hands to build things. Something. Doesn't matter what it is, but to build something.
They have to construct it right from the beginning.
And know how things are used and whatever. So when she's excited to tell me too that in the classrooms they have a full textiles room and what have you, where there's sewing machines and there's, as say, larger looms and what have you, so that they can actually build something. And the other thing I saw too, which I took a photo of, was, they actually use real hammers, real nails, and all real tools. So they're not plastic, they're not the little tacks that we have, they're actually real tools. And as I said, it comes back to the trust that the children are able to use those in the classroom without having teachers looking over the top of them, and that they're using them correctly, because they're given them so early that but they were the two things that I loved in the toy shop.
So that's pretty much our day that we wanted to share with you. In a nutshell, to sum everything up for today, we feel that the reasons why the Finns are so successful in being the number one in education is because they've taken a holistic approach to investing in their people. It's a simple message. They've gone back to basics, and all they've done is just invested in their people.
From a very early age. From a very early age, because as we said earlier, is that that money that you could be spending on welfare after someone's left school and not doing well, what have you, that's more than actually putting that money into a person from year one all the way through, so that they come out with a qualification that they're able to then put that back into the country here. So
because they figured out it cost them about $1 million a year just to spend money on welfare for one person,
where if they
who was homeless, uneducated, you know. So
so that's pretty much it. They invest in their people.
Invest.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Sorry, how do we say thank you and finish?
Oh, kiitos.
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 We've learnt a few words here.
So we'll bring some more words tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.